Welcome to Royal Daily Report, your trusted source for royal news and updates. I'm your host, bringing you the stories that matter. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update from Royal Daily Report. She's clearly doing this because she's trying to prove to the mainstream media, because now they're starting to talk about this whole birth being fake coming from Meghan. So, she's trying to put out there to the haters, look, it is me giving birth. See? I'm in the hospital dancing like a skank. She's got form for strapping on baby bumps. There's something very wrong with that shape in my view. I think they split within 12 months, developing today. It was the job that ricocheted around the world for all the wrong reasons. Meghan Markle believed that she would finally put to rest the ongoing and, I believe, very accurate speculation that she had been wearing a moon bump. Given that if these children were not born by Meghan Markle's body, then they are unable to sit in the line of succession. The royal line of succession. We're talking about Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, of course. Then this video, and let's take a look at some of it, because this video has horrified so many, because Meghan quite clearly here, is in some type of moon bump. This is not a natural body position. That's before you even get to the fact she was never supposed to speak. But now, the woman behind Meghan's royal pregnancies is ready to blow the whole lie wide open. Meghan dare. Is that a real baby bump, or has she strapped it on? Because weird, she's got form for strapping on baby bumps. Don't forget to subscribe to Royal Daily Report for more exclusive coverage. She was never supposed to exist in the story. For years, the public was shown a perfect picture, a royal love story, to pregnancies, to children. Everything looked smooth, polished, and complete. There were smiles, soft lighting, and carefully chosen moments meant to show happiness and normalcy to the world. Nothing felt out of place. But behind that image, another woman says she was hidden away. She goes by the initials DL. Not a nickname, not a brand, just 2 letters. Because, according to her, even her name was not meant to survive. DL says she was not a witness to events. She was not an assistant. She was not watching from the sidelines. She claimed she was the woman who carried both children from the very beginning of the pregnancies to the moment they were born. And then she disappeared. She says her silence was never optional. It was required. For years, she stayed quiet under agreements that promised privacy in exchange for something far more extreme. Disappearance, no interviews, no public acknowledgement, no identity, no place in the story at all. She lived outside the public record, while someone else stepped forward as the face of motherhood. Stay tuned to Royal Daily Report. We bring you the truth. For a long time, that silence held. The story the world accepted stayed intact. But DL now says that silence has become impossible to maintain. Not because she wanted attention, not because she wanted revenge, but because, in her words, the story everyone believes was never the full story. And what she describes next is not chaos, it is structure. According to DL, nothing about this happened by chance. She says she was recruited through a discreet, high-level agency operating far from public view. The arrangement was explained clearly and without emotion. She would carry the pregnancies, she would follow medical instructions without question, and once the children were born, she would step away permanently. There would be no connection, no public role, no future contact. DL says her life quickly became controlled. Her movements were monitored. Her contact with the outside world was cut off. No phone calls, no visitors, no freedom that might create a trail. Her days followed a strict routine: rest, medical appointments, and silence. She does not describe this as cruelty. She describes it as precision. Everything she says was designed to produce one outcome, while leaving no fingerprints behind before the pregnancies were complete. Remember to subscribe to Royal Daily Report for updates like this. DL says the silence was put in writing. She claimed she signed detailed agreements outlining compensation, confidentiality, and complete disappearance. Once the children were delivered, she would be erased from the narrative as if she had never existed. And for a long time, that is exactly what happened. She stayed quiet. She stayed invisible. The story moved forward without her. Silence protected the image. Silence protected the structure. But silence, she says, has a breaking point. Living outside the record eventually became heavier than breaking it. Because when someone must vanish entirely for a story to survive, the question becomes unavoidable. Why was such extreme silence necessary? And what kind of story depends on someone disappearing to remain intact? That question is where everything begins to change. For years, silence kept everything in place. As long as no one spoke, the story remained untouched. But according to DL, silence eventually stopped doing its job. Not because of rumors, not because of public pressure, but because evidence entered the picture. Royal Daily Report, bringing you the stories others won't tell. DL claims this is no longer about personal accounts. She says she possesses signed agreements, medical records, pregnancy timelines, ultrasounds, and written correspondence involving legal teams and the agency that managed the arrangement. This is where the story changes shape. DL says she has retained legal counsel and is prepared to testify under oath. She has also agreed to DNA testing, not privately, not quietly, but through formal legal channels. Once that happens, public relations no longer matter. Statements don't slow anything down. Silence doesn't pause the process. Evidence does. At that point, the story stops being controlled and starts being examined. While DL says she lived in isolation, the public saw something very different. Cameras followed Meghan Markle through appearances that showed a calm, visible pregnancy. Smiles, interviews, carefully presented moments that suggested everything was natural and seamless. According to DL, both realities existed at the same time. She describes carrying the physical strain of pregnancy in silence, while watching from a distance as someone else received the recognition that traditionally follows motherhood. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report and stay informed. One woman carried the biological reality. Another carried the public image. DL says the imbalance was intentional. The arrangement was never about fairness. It was about outcome. The children would arrive. The story would remain intact, and no one would ask how it happened until the silence began to break. Because once two realities exist side by side, one hidden, one visible, the question becomes unavoidable. What was the silence protecting? Royal births are usually designed to remove doubt. For generations, they follow clear procedures. Doctors appear publicly. Confirmations are witnessed. Records are signed and verified. These steps exist to establish legitimacy. But in this case, those steps were missing. There were no doctors outside the hospital, no immediate photographs, no traditional confirmations, only a short announcement saying the children had arrived. At the time, this was explained as a desire for privacy. But privacy does not require eliminating protocol. One can exist without removing the other. Don't miss our next report. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report now. According to claims now emerging, questions were not clarified behind closed doors. They were discouraged. And when institutions built on record-keeping allow gaps, those gaps don't disappear. They wait, because eventually, attention always finds what procedure leaves behind. At first, the missing details didn't cause a public reaction. Stories can survive gaps, especially when the image remains strong. According to claims now emerging, questions about those gaps did surface, but not publicly. They surfaced behind closed doors, and when they did, DL says they weren't answered. They weren't delayed. They weren't clarified quietly. They were discouraged. The absence of procedure wasn't explained. It was accepted. And that matters because institutions built on record-keeping do not ignore missing steps without reason. When silence replaces documentation, it isn't accidental. It's strategic. For a while, that strategy worked. The image held. Appearances continued. The story moved forward as if nothing had been skipped. But silence has a weakness. It cannot correct what people eventually notice on their own. Royal Daily Report, your source for the truth behind the headlines. Over time, small moments began to feel off. Not all at once, not dramatically, just enough to register. There were appearances where the pregnancy seemed unusually large, then unusually low. Moments where movement caused sharp creases instead of soft shifts. Instances where the silhouette appeared inconsistent from one setting to the next. Individually, none of this proved anything, but patterns don't rely on a single frame. They rely on repetition. According to claims now being made, these were not natural variations. DL alleges they were signs of something else, that what the public saw was not biology. Adjusting over time, but presentation changing by design. When images stop feeling lived and start feeling managed, attention sharpens. And once attention sharpens, control becomes harder to maintain. DL claims the goal was never deception for attention. It was consistency for credibility. She alleges the use of specially designed prosthetic pregnancy bellies, molded to match different stages and worn to maintain a stable public image, each appearance rehearsed, each angle considered, each moment curated. Consistency mattered more than realism. As long as nothing went wrong, the illusion held. The story stayed smooth, the image stayed intact. But consistency only works when nothing breaks. And according to this account, something eventually did. Because when a narrative relies on constant reinforcement, even small disruptions can expose how carefully it's being held together. Stay connected with Royal Daily Report for breaking updates. Then came the video. A hospital room, a visibly pregnant Meghan Markle, music playing. Movement meant to suggest labor was near. The message was clear. This is real. This is happening. Nothing is hidden. But instead of ending the conversation, the video changed its tone. To many observers, it didn't feel spontaneous. It felt staged, not intimate, but performative. And the timing mattered. The video didn't appear during the pregnancy. It appeared later after questions had already begun circulating quietly. In crisis management, this is a known mistake. When proof arrives after doubt, it rarely reassures. It invites scrutiny. Rather than grounding the story, the video made it feel reinforced, as though authenticity was being demonstrated instead of lived. From that moment on, the question shifted. Not should the story be believed, but why it suddenly needed reinforcing at all. And once that shift happens, the image that once felt unbreakable begins to crack. That's all for today's report from Royal Daily Report. We've brought you DL's claims, the controlled arrangement she describes, the evidence she says she possesses, and the questions that won't go away. If you found this information valuable, make sure you're subscribed to Royal Daily Report. Hit that like button, share this video with others who need to know the truth. And turn on notifications so you never miss our next report. This is Royal Daily Report, bringing you royal news that matters. Until next time, stay informed and stay curious.